Hey everyone! Can everyone see me? Can everyone hear me? Any claps if you can see and hear me? A thumbs up, that's all I need. One is good enough. Perfect. Thanks everyone. Welcome. My name is Whitney Morgan and I am the Director of Operations with an organization called North Forge. We acknowledge that we are located on Treaty 1 territory, the ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, Anishinaabe, Dakota Oyate, Denisoline, and Nehetawa nations, and is a homeland of the Red River Métis. Northern Manitoba includes lands that were and are the ancestral lands of the Inuit. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we as North Forge and Manitoba Women in Tech are dedicating ourselves to move forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. With the combined forces of New Media Manitoba, Tech Manitoba, and North Forge, we are here to support and share experiences, applaud accomplishments, and promote tech activities in a safe, gender-inclusive, and judgment-free environment, which is where Manitoba Women in Tech was born. If you have a moment, I would ask that you take a look at a code of conduct, which Tina has pinned on top of our LinkedIn page. But in essence, we're asking that everyone be respectful, be kind, and be supportive of each other. We host regular get-togethers every month, and for anyone working in and with tech, we would welcome you join us and meet other women and folks that are working in this space. We do regular survey our attendees to ensure that we are providing content that individuals want, that the format of our gathering works for the majority that want to attend as well. This platform that we're on is called Remo. So if no one, if you haven't been to Remo before or been on Remo before, we were in kind of a networking session before this. So now your mic and your camera are turned off. But in this networking session, you can double click on any of the chairs that were open. And so that helps you move tables. We adopted this right on the onset of COVID because we wanted somewhere where it wasn't Zoom, where you had to go get put into a room where you couldn't talk freely. So this tended to be a wonderful solution for us. Today, we welcome Tracy Gominski of mode40 as she shares her nonlinear journey into the industry. She's the Chief Product Officer and partner at mode40, where she builds AI-powered products for manufacturing. With a career that started on a dairy farm, which I know we're going to get into more, and is evolved into leading large-scale technology initiatives, she brings a practical, operations-first perspective to building and using technology. I have a number of questions that are teed up for Tracy, but we do have the opportunity to have a Q&A. So you may see on your right-hand side of the screen, we have chat, participants, Q&A, and polls. So if you have a question for Tracy, I would ask that you please pop your Q&A into that. I'm seeing some screenshot on the LinkedIn post. Tina, maybe I can get you to take a peek at that. Back to the Q&A though, if you have a question, please put it in. You can also upvote someone else's question. So if you have something that's burning that you see someone else has asked, you can upvote it so it brings it up to the top of the screen. But to keep us moving forward, Tracy, thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem. And please ask lots of questions because I don't want to just sit here and babble on for no reason. I would rather speak with purpose. And so if you have any burning questions that you want to ask, then feel free to pop them in the chat there.
Absolutely. Tracy and I could talk, so please jump in. First, Tracy, maybe take us on that journey from the dairy farm and kind of where you started rural Manitoba and moving forward.
Yeah, so I never had any intention of being in tech, like zero intention. I thought I was going to be a farmer for life. So rubber boots, bib pants, wielding a pitchfork. That is really where I always saw my path in life. I grew up on a dairy farm. My father was in an unfortunate accident when I was 19 years old and broke his back. He is fine. He did recover from the injury, but it did create that there was a decision that needed to be made, whether we keep the dairy farm, but then I would actually take over at 19 years old, or we would sell. And at 19, I did not feel prepared to run a 300 cow dairy operation. And so the decision was to sell the farm. And then we purchased a broiler breeder operation. And I had gone to school to be a vet tech, more for bringing that medical knowledge to the farm than anything else. And when we bought the chicken farm, it was a new industry. So farming is farming, but animal husbandry and practices are different depending on animal type, obviously. And so there's 27 of these types of farms in Manitoba, so very small community. And everything was paper-based, and we were expected to make decisions on 20,000 birds in 6 different barns. We were producing our own feed, and everything was in binders and paper. And they were like, oh, but if this, then that, and if the water is this, and your feed consumption's that, then the moon's going to rise in the east, and the chickens are going to lay blue eggs. And it was super confusing for me, and I couldn't learn how to make business decisions because there was just too much information and no ability to do pattern recognition or anything like that. And so I self-taught how to develop, and I built a program that actually helped me manage the farm operations, from forecasting chicks per hen housed per bird, to feed consumption, to predicting production drops, planning for when a barn would empty, and then as well as feed production. And then it also helped me put together the business case that had us actually buy a grain farm in Saskatchewan, because grain prices had jumped, and I calculated that we would actually make better margins if we produced our own commodities. So all using this technology. And so leveraging that power and then implementing automated systems into our barns and tying those in also kind of like fired up the, well, there is an easier way to do things, and not everything has to be so manual. So that was really where my career was born. And as far as like my tech side of things, and then I continued to produce different tools and enhance the tools that we made through the span of the time that we had the farm. At about the 10-year mark of having that farm, we decided to sell and invest solely into the grain operation. But then I had married, had children, and was well established here in the area just outside of Steinbach, and did not have the want or will to relocate my family into Saskatchewan, where the grain farm was. And so my dad kind of looked at me and was like, yeah, but I think you're highly employable, so you'll be fine, and left me to my own devices. So from there, I took a term position in the accounts payable department of our local health authority, because running the farm required all kinds of skill sets from an accounting perspective. And so I went there and I was doing accounts payable, and there was paper all over the place and disjointed systems and all of these file cabinets. And I thought, well, this is so disorganized. And so I built a paperless file system for the accounts payable department. And then one day the director of IT came, and I got hauled into an office at the where I was working. And he was like, did you do that? And I was like, well, yeah. And I thought like I would get applauded. And he was like, you can't do that. Nobody gave you permission to do that. And I was like, yeah, but it's so much better. Like, it's all stored in one place, and you're not having to scan things. And it's like there's digital records. And he's like, but you didn't have permission to do that. You can't just do those things without permission. And I thought, well, that's silly. Like, why shouldn't we be empowered to like optimize and make our businesses more efficient? And long story short, they actually created a position in the IT department so that they could keep an eye on me, because they saw the value in what I was doing, but also needed to kind of control that spirit of process optimization and my creative ambition to make things better. And so they put me in the IT department. So I was like procurement, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. I learned how to manage servers. I learned how to be a network administrator. So learned the whole tried and true IT side of things and started working, doing business analysis and some product development, but more on the like access database side of things. And one day High Life contacted me and said, "Hey, you have an ag background. Do you want to come work in our software development department? Because you can bridge the gap where you have technical skills and understanding, but also the business acumen and agriculture background." And I was like, "Oh, well, that kind of sounds like fun. Let's go try that." So I went over to High Life, and that's, I think, where I would say my tech career really started, tried and true, because I got to work with the software development team and a director of business solutions, where we were doing what it is, kind of what mode40 does today, is we look at the business holistically and then find those processes and use technology as a tool, but we don't just focus on the technology. We focus on the whole holistic approach and the upstream and downstream impacts and the greater good of implementing these process optimizations and efficiencies and toolings. And so from High Life, I did some consulting, and then that spun up that I was offered a partnership to build a tech company for the pension and benefits space. And so I did that for 4 years, sold that out a couple of years ago, and then joined Cameron here at mode40 to continue to do what we started at High Life, but as an independent organization doing it for other businesses. And we don't only service manufacturing, we actually service education and health sectors as well. And so we've even expanded our industry and sector space since I've come on board.
Amazing. So yeah, clearly not a linear ring to tech. You said a couple things in there that tech was not on your radar at all back in the day. Was entrepreneurship on your radar and coming into that kind of startup life?
Yeah. So the grind is something that I'm born in and bleed that, having been third, fourth generation farmer. And so that entrepreneurial spirit is you live and breathe your work, and you wake up in the morning and it's work, and you go to bed 365. Everything revolves around the business. And so I didn't know any other lifestyle, and I actually struggled a little bit when I was working for somebody else, because there was never this expectation to be better, do better necessarily. And so part of the challenges that I found where I always wanted to push the boundaries, and not everybody met me where I was at. And so that made for sometimes I either had to defer and put aside what I thought were my opinions on what was best. And other times it was acclaimed and like celebrated and was impactful in my career, where I went from being an entry-level analyst to the applications manager to a consultant to CEO to partner.
Awesome. So at the start, you taught yourself. You said you taught yourself tech to be able to optimize those systems. What made you go that way instead of, and maybe it's a budget thing, but instead of going the other way and getting someone to come in and support you in that sense so you could continue to work on the business? Why teach yourself tech?
There was no way, shape, or form I was going to convince my dad to spend money on a consultant to help us solve this problem. And so there's no tractor parked in the yard. I can't see it. It was incomprehensible to invest the money in that. I did find other solutions that we could have licensed. But back in the early 2000s, licensing was much more expensive, and you had to install it on a computer, and it wasn't favorable. And there was no way I was convincing my dad that was something to do. So he couldn't stop me from building it. And so I literally went to the bookstore and bought like how to use Access for Dummies, how to write C++ for Dummies, like all of the how to dummies books.
Yeah.
In that time, I read them all and figured out which languages to use, how to build up environments, and how to set up a database and different database types, like all of the things using how to, because even Google back then wasn't great. Like the
Yeah.
internet browsers, like we didn't have what we have today. Like if we had the AI tools that are currently available, my life would have been a heck of a lot easier.
Was there anything that stood out as, I mean, obviously things have changed, and as you mentioned AI, but was there anything that stood out was like, this was my favorite resource that I had throughout this whole, like, that you would still go back to?
There was a forum
Maybe.
that I logged into that was, so like a version of Reddit. I don't remember what it was called, but it was like a version of Reddit that I think really helped me because I could ask questions and then have somebody actually, or many people actually answer like different approaches to kind of help me problem solve. Sometimes it was days, sometimes it was weeks before I actually got a response, but like those threads and stuff like that were super helpful to help troubleshoot and problem solve. And then I spent a ton of time at the library checking out books and going to chapters and buying books and leaning on those types of things. I didn't know anybody who did development at that time. So literally I had nobody to lean on from that standpoint. In hindsight, I wish there would have been somebody available, but in the network that I was in, I didn't. I should have probably put it on Facebook and be like, hey, is anybody a software developer? Because there was Facebook at that point.
But at that time, I grew up in a tiny town too. Like, I grew up in a small rural town that wasn't a role that you really saw come through,
No.
especially in the rural farming communities. Like, they would have gone to the city, and then that would, like, they weren't around.
Yeah, and I find it interesting. So like in my town, most of the people don't even know and understand what I do because I don't think that they could comprehend that there's somebody that builds AI technology and develops models or even develops software in general. But even being in Steinbach and being a business located out of Steinbach, there's a whole bunch of large tech companies in Steinbach that actually don't service locally. They all export their product. And nobody even realizes that they exist. Like Rocket Res and Rotessa are all out of Steinbach. And nobody knows that they even exist because the client base that they service is not local. So they just fly under the radar. They have these discrete buildings that they work out of, and nobody even realizes that they exist.
That's wild, eh?
Mm-hmm.
So you had mentioned that sometimes your ideas and your optimized kind of brain in this sense was either celebrated or sometimes kind of put to the side. Was there an experience like that you had early on that really shaped how you think and you work? Maybe how you brought up some of those different changes within the organizations that you work with now?
I learned pretty early on that leading by influence was going to be my friend. And so if I tried to drive my idea by convincing people, I wouldn't necessarily have the success than if I was a lot softer in my approach and knew and understood how the rest of the audience found value in, and then tried to weave that into how they find value in things. And then oftentimes they make it their own idea and we get to the same outcome. And I don't need to get the kudos that it was my idea and we're doing the thing that I thought of. I actually just wanted to get the means to an end. Like, this is what I think the best possible solution, or this is the approach that we should take. How we get there and whose idea it was I was indifferent. And so leading by influence was my friend and a skill that I had to refine very early on.
And is there anything else that you maybe wish you had known earlier on in your journey?
Listening is like the most powerful tool, and listening to understand people. When you really spend the time digging into the whys people are making the statements that they are, why they have the concerns that they have, why we're doing the things that we're doing, those become significant game changers when you're trying to do different things.
And there's a lot of our individuals that we have here, and I know for me, my journey into tech wasn't traditional. I mean, I work within the industry, not traditional either. What would you say to someone who maybe feels like their path isn't that traditional path? Because we do hear a lot of, oh, I went to university, comps, like all those, what people think a traditional path into tech should be. What would you say on the flip side of that?
My dogs are barking, so I hope it's suppressing it. I think if there is no linear path. Your path is your path, and I think the more that you stay true to doing the things that you enjoy and what you find value, the better off you're going to be. And that doesn't need to be that it's going to be like a straight shot. And that doesn't mean you need to graduate at 18. And I just threw something at my dogs, hoping they would be quiet. You're not necessarily going to see that, like, going into and having a comp sci degree right out of the gate is going to be the true definition to the path that you're on. What we're seeing now, especially with the advent of bringing in AI enablement to system development or tooling, has business expertise and experience being at the forefront. And so bringing that to the table and knowing and understanding how the business is supposed to work and how the desired outcomes are impacted by the process in which you take to get there is really important. And so I think the face of technology, with kind of the disruption that we're seeing now, is the sitting behind the computer, traditional software development. I'm just coding and it's waterfall and I'm following my user stories, and if then when as a stakeholder blank 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 is actually going to kind of be negatively impacted that process. And we're going to see a different version of it where we're going to be talking about more like the business and the interpretation of the technology implementations are going to look drastically different, because it's not going to be cut and dry, black and white like it used to be.
And for anyone that, I mean, maybe there's some individuals that aren't in tech yet, what would you say kind of first steps, like what would you tell them to do to either launch it or even to listen within? What would you say to those people?
Learn all the things. Stay on top of anything that you can, all of the new and upcoming stuff. You don't have to learn it all in detail, but be cognizant of it, like how different, like the big tech companies or some of the smaller ones that are spinning off of the big ones are using the different technology approaches, or what the research and development of different practices of using technology, how they're being applied, are super important. And be curious in those spaces, like why, how is that applied? Where would that be of value? One of the biggest things that I find that people don't do enough of is they think things are industry specific and not agnostic. I have a great story on how we implemented an entire process and designed a system for storing chilled protein in a cooler for efficient loading and unloading, following the strategies that the Mayo Clinic does patient filtering through different departments and how they go in and out, intake and outtake in different departments as they seek medical attention. And so we took the strategies that were very successful at that Mayo Clinic and then applied them to like how you load and unload a cooler. And so those are the types of things that I think more and more people need to think outside of the box and apply those principles. And I think they'll find great success in that space.
Thank you. I'm seeing some questions come in on the side. And as I had mentioned, I could ask you questions all day long. But I see one that says, oh, and I think the one around Stack Overflow was very specific to something you were talking about. It says, was it Stack Overflow?
I'd have to know.
I think was
what I was talking about at that time.
Don't have the transcript of that, but maybe we can come back to it. But Revneet asks, how do you traverse the challenges you would have faced working with coworkers who would have had formal education in the field? Were they supportive, challenging, or maybe questioning? That's a great question.
I've had both. So I'm actually 2 credits short of my comp sci degree. So I did take it kind of in parallel, but I am double certified in change management, double certified in project management and conflict resolution and negotiations. So I'm a constant learner. Like I perpetually am learning and taking new certifications. And I got to the point in my comp sci degree that I did all of the things. And a lot of it was because I felt I needed to have my comp sci degree for anybody to take me seriously. And after I built my first tech company and found that it was actually my ability to solve business problems using technology that was of actual value and not the couple of letters behind my name that I didn't have, that was my value. And so I actually stopped. And part of it is to prove a point that I don't actually need that formal education to be good at my job. I have run into people who even refuse to talk to me because I don't have a comp sci degree, but I would go toe to toe with them coding any day. And it's more about knowing and understanding how to build out proper infrastructure and architecture and maintain cybersecurity protocols and make sure you're working with different firewalls. And like it's more than just like bashing code. Like it's a big picture. It's more than that. And when, especially from the business perspective, when we're servicing clients, it's not about the lines of code. It's about, how does the client find value? Is it the product safe? Are we following compliance? Is it scalable? Like all of those things. And I think at the end of the day, if you don't want to take me seriously because I am not a formally certified comp sci degreed person, that's okay. Then we don't need to be friends and we don't need to do business together. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, kind of that's a them problem, not a you problem, right? Yeah.
Correct.
Absolutely. Zoe asks, what would you recommend as the most effective way to land the first actual development role for a newbie, specifically between practicing LEET code and learning to use AI tools, which would be more valuable? I'm
going to make no friends here. AI-enabled software development is where it's all going to go. And at the speed of coding, if you don't know how to leverage using AI tools to support your software development, they should be a tool like anything else. So vibe coding's cool. When I talk about AI-enabled software development, it is significantly different than vibe coding and using like a Replit or a Lovable or any one of those other tools that are out there. Because if you don't understand infrastructure, data security and sovereignty, securing your endpoints, cyber, database schemas, like all of the other things that you need to think about, that those tools have some configuration to them, but they can't just stand alone. But AI-enabled software development, if done correctly, using the tools, it's a shared, like you're working with the tool to get to a desired outcome. So it's just doing the what I would say like the menial tasks of doing some of the software development, and then letting you still need to know how, making sure that you're not duplicating, making sure that there's no spaghetti coding practices, you're servicing your technical debt, all of those kinds of things. So I would say you should be well versed in all of the AI tools that are out there and how to use them, because they are a differentiator in the space when it comes to I'm going to say the expected productivity of a developer. I always recommend any clients that we have that have internal software development teams. They're like, oh yeah, but we don't need junior developers. No, you do. We do still need people coming into this practice and this industry. And because the senior developers at some point are going to retire, and you can't become a senior if you weren't a junior at one point. And so we have to continue to foster that pipeline and bring those students in and build out the next generation of developers. They're just going to look a little bit different than what they did 5 years ago, 8 years ago.
Amazing. Zoe, I hope that provides you some insight as you move forward. And then there's a wonderful sentiment and question here. Elena says, hi, Tracy. Thank you very much for sharing your story. It's truly inspiring. I worked on a dairy farm in Bloom North for 2 years, which is my first job in Canada. You transitioned from the agriculture field to the IT field is very impressive. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Thank you.
Oh, still doing what I do now. I love my job. If I have spare time, I build tools for not-for-profits because they can't afford to license tools and they have a need. And so I build tools and I gift them to not-for-profits and I support them. I love my job. I go to work every day. I work obscene amount of hours, but it doesn't feel like it because I love my job. I'm also a new grandparent, so I have a granddaughter that's 4 weeks old and am loving best job title ever, like by far. I've had some great job titles, but that's the best one ever. And I think as I'm moving into that season of my life and we're growing mode 40, it's about managing like both of those joys, right? Where I love to do all of the tech stuff, but I also love to spend all of that time with my family as well. So that's where I see the next 5 years. Doing what I'm doing today is probably where I'm going to be in 5 years because I love it so much.
I love that. That's wonderful. And congratulations on your new title. That is really the best title. There's another sentiment in the chat because I'm not sure if you'll have a moment to review the chat. So I do want to say this. It says, thank you, Tracy, for sharing your journey. Is truly inspiring for all of us. I'm really amazed by how you transformed your interpersonal skills and learned IT technologies, especially coming from a farming background. Even after being in IT for 20 years, I've seen many colleagues who hesitate to adapt or change their technology, what makes your journey even more admirable. So I did want to read that out to you. But I also see in the chat that there's 2 more questions before I get to the one at the very top here about an Easter egg that we've seen. So one says, as you mentioned, you completed some certifications. Could you share your perspective on whether they truly help in real world scenarios?
Yeah, I think it depends on which ones that you complete. For the conflict resolution and negotiations one, I actually found super helpful. And I'm double certified in change management because I did ProSci and then I did another one through the U of M, through the Asper School of Business, only to get different approaches. Change management is like an adoption is like 94% of the reason that digital transformation projects actually fail. It's not actually the tools, it's the adoption. And so I think from a certification perspective, knowing and applying a lot of those principles are great. I'm double certified in project management as well, but there's a lot of those approaches that I may not necessarily take because I like best fit for situation types of things. But the bigger your toolbox, the better. And I think that's why I constantly am taking seminars and micro credentials and doing all those kinds of things because I want to fill my toolbox and have it as full as possible because you never know what kind of tool you'll need for whatever situation that you're in. And so I do strongly believe, not maybe not as a whole, like will the entire certification provide value? No, but I do believe that you will come out of there with tips and tricks and tools that you can then apply in different ways, shapes, or forms throughout your career. So it's never a bad thing to do any of those. I think they always come in handy. Like I've taken like database courses, not because I need to do any like database management or data, like even some data science courses, but I thought it's good to know because it's good context for when I'm driving other decisions or helping support clients.
Amazing. Hazel's asking that she's working with a nonprofit organization and wants to learn about automation for making the process to reach out to donors easier. Do you have any suggestions for resources on learning about automation?
Yeah, use AI and ask it. No, I'm kidding, but not. I think some of the best things that you can actually find today, like I have instructed GPTs in Chat GPT, and I also have like paid versions of everything, so keep that in mind as well, or Claude. But they're actually really good at recommending like different tools that are out there that are like built to suit. I think there's knowing and understanding if your not-for-profit organization has an ecosystem already, leverage like that licensing. So if you're a Microsoft shop in your not-for-profit, then see if it's feasible to use Copilot, Power Automate, those types of things. If you're using Google's got some using Gemini and some other of their automation workflows can be of significant value. It depends on how much you actually want to define and optimize those processes, but they're usually can get you a few steps forward just by looking at your current office suite of whatever you have.
And then another one around optimizing processes. So when researching how to optimize processes in a field you're not familiar with, do you have any advice on how to handle that?
Yeah. Put the rubber boots on, put the hard hat on, and go and see. There's no replication for job shadowing and going and understanding what it is that is actually happening. Because you can read all of the process workflows you want, you can read all of the SOPs that you want, but I guarantee that the people that are doing the jobs are not following the SOPs and that the process workflows are not likely up to date, even if you wrote them last week. And there's random post-it notes of things that you need to remember to do, and like there's going to be missing pieces. So the best thing you can do is job shadow and watch the people doing the job, and if you can, sit down and do it yourself, because there's no better way to figure out where the constraints are than when you're the newbie trying to do a job and figuring out how to optimize it, than coming in greenfield with no previous biases and sitting down and trying to do it yourself.
Unreal answer. I love that. Going out and seeing and talking to people and being there. Yeah. I have a thank you, Tracy, for sharing your story. It's truly inspiring. As a self-learner, did you ever feel uncertain about your tech skills? I'd love to know how you made sure you were choosing the best solution available.
Oh, I wake up every morning uncertain about my tech skills. Serious self-doubt all the time on, am I designing the right solution for the client? Am I using the right tools to meet my needs? Am I using the right tech stack for this product all the time. I think leveraging your current experience and being knowledgeable and curious in the space and constantly educating yourself will help alleviate a lot of that. And at any given point in time, you will, those voices in your head will start to get quieter, and you will gain the self-confidence that actually I do know what I'm doing, and this is the right approach. And if you learn something tomorrow that disproves the approach that you chose yesterday, then pivot. It's okay to pivot. If you have new information and you need to make a change, it is okay to do that, and be forgiving in that, because if you didn't have that information yesterday when you made the decision, but you have it today, there is no harm or hurt in changing that direction and admitting, hey, yeah, you know what, with what we knew yesterday, that was the right approach, but today we know something different, so we're going to take this way, and this is why. And then tomorrow it might change a little bit too, and that needs to be okay. And I don't think we do that enough. We really, really don't. We always view that as a failure, like, oh, you should have known better. But you only know what you know in the moment that you know it, and we need to be a little more gracious.
That's very good advice to leave us off with. But I do want to just, we're coming in on 12:30, which is an amazing conversation. Doesn't feel that long at all. But there was an Easter egg that you kind of left the audience with on LinkedIn. You want to tell me a little bit about air brakes?
Sure. So back when I was growing up on the dairy farm, we actually used to do custom field work. And so we would do corn silage and hay silage. If you don't know what that is, you just chop up the corn and chop up the hay. You put it on a pile, you cover it up, and you let it ferment, and then that's what you feed the animals, you feed the cows. And so we owned the equipment, and we used to do it for hire to surrounding farmers to offset the cost of the equipment and also provide a service to the other local farmers. And so I used to drive the semi truck without a class 1 license at 16, 17 years old. And my dad used to run the silage chopper. And so I was driving into the field with my silage, with my semi-trailer, and was coming into the field to get to the chopper so that he could unload his wagon, and then I could go and take it to the farm. And we were always, the chopper was so fast that we had 2 trucks. So my mom drove one truck and I drove the other truck, and then my dad operated the chopper. And so as I was pulling up to the chopper, my brakes locked up, my air brakes locked up. And so I stopped the truck, obviously, because I was skidding. And my dad jumped out of the chopper, and he was like, oh, your air brakes locked up. And I was like, oh, okay. And so he crawled underneath the truck. And I laugh now because I can, but my dad took a wrench and proceeded to just beat this air brake to try to get it unlocked. Well, anybody who knows anything about mechanics knows that that's a really terrible idea. And the air brake actually blew off and hit my dad in the head and knocked him out under the truck. I thought he was dead because this thing came out like hard and loud, like with a bang, and my dad went flying. And I was so upset, and I'm screaming like, Dad, are you okay? Are you okay? And he's laying there unconscious. And my mom's parked at the other end of the field waiting for us. So she's waiting for me to unload and take off. And I'm jumping jacks. And I'm like, Mom, Dad's dead. And she can't hear me because she's way across the field. And she's sitting there and she's waving at me, and she's like waving. And then she gets into her truck, and I'm like hopping around, and I'm running to see my dad, and I'm yelling, don't go towards the light. Don't go towards the light, Dad, no. And I'm running and jumping around to my mom. And finally my dad starts to stir, and my mom drives over, and I'm crying my eyes out. And my dad's got this big mark on his head. And then my mom starts yelling at my dad for being so goofy, and why would you do that? And then she's yelling at me for not telling her sooner, and I'm yelling at her because I'm like, I was jumping and I thought Dad was dead. And so all that to be said is everybody was fine. Sometimes even when you're jumping around trying to get somebody's attention, they misconstrue your message and just wave at you, and your message isn't clear coming across. And don't use a pipe wrench to unlock a air brake.
Lessons learned across the board, as you're saying.
And I have like a whole long list of crazy stories. So if you ever wanted to hear them, then just let me know.
Oh my gosh, Tracy, what a story to end on. But how would you pull that into the middle of this anyway? So there we go. What a great story to end on. Thank you so much for joining us today. I've had the pleasure of being on a couple panels with Tracy over the last couple of months, so very happy to be able to bring you into this new new ecosystem for you. So thank you so much. Everyone, we're going to be jumping back into the networking. So we're going to leave this big screen and go back to those tables. Again, if you want to move around, double click at any of the chairs. Make sure your cameras and mics are on if you want to chat with anyone. But that's it for us. Thanks for spending your lunch hour with us, and we'll see you back at the networking. Thank you so much, Tracy. Take care, guys.
No, thank you.